Hello and welcome to Living the Wild Dream. I'm Hugh Morrison, Regional Director for the Pacific region of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and I'm honored and excited to welcome you to this truly special project. This multimedia project was created to share the unique life and career journeys of 5 service employees from early career to near retirement, and to further the visibility of people of color in the field of conservation. Although this project centers around Black and African American employees who came through the Fish and Aquatic Conservation Program in the Pacific region, the hope is that their stories elevate the visibility and representation of all people of color in conservation, science, and outreach, both today and for the next generation. Having a diverse workforce that reflects the American public is exceptionally important to the future of conservation, and we work passionately toward increasing our reach to wider audiences so that our workforce represents the public we serve. The region's Fish and Aquatic Conservation Program is making this happen. I'm thrilled to introduce you to my longtime colleague, Assistant Regional Director of the Fish and Aquatic Conservation Program, Judy Gordon. She's joined by Dan Nehler, Nicole Hams, Rikeem Sholes, and Typhanie Shepherd in this exceptional and engaging piece about their life and career journeys. I hope their achievements and personal stories will be inspirational to all of us, reminding us of the power of unity and diversity and what it means to live your wildest dreams. Thank you for watching.
Hi, my name is Typhanie Shepherd. I work for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. I'm a documentary filmmaker and public affairs specialist for the Pacific Region Office of Communications.
My name is Rikeem Sholes. I'm a fish biologist, and I work at the Columbia River Fish and Wildlife Conservation Office here in Vancouver, Washington.
Well, my name is Dr. Nicole Hams. I'm a science communication and outreach biologist. I work for the Columbia River Fish and Wildlife Conservation Office in Vancouver, Washington, in Region 1.
My name is Dan Nehler, and I work in our regional office in Portland, Oregon, and I'm what we call a line supervisor. I'm really just a fisheries biologist that basically supervises the field or some of our budget and admin staff.
My name is Judy Gordon. I'm the Assistant Regional Director for Fish and Aquatic Conservation for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service in the Pacific region.
First moment that sparked an interest in wildlife for me was probably Zaboomafoo, and another main inspiration would be Mythbusters. That's what got me into the science side and the wildlife, I would say. I always wanted to know how they filmed those things. So watching probably Blue Planet or the History Channel, I was always interested in these places are amazing, how are they getting the shot? Where are these people going? How do they get the shot of that penguin? I always wanted to know are they setting the cameras up? Are there people actually sitting out there waiting hours or days or months to get the shot?
So there was a point during undergrad where I had worked a long time, knew I wanted to be in biology, but I was maybe about 2 years in, I was in my sophomore year. And I'm like, oh, I don't know, I'm not sure about this. I'm only halfway through, I could still go and do a bunch of other things. So I'm like, I should probably try the job out a little bit before I finish my degree, and then I can make the decision based on that. I was lucky enough to get a job with U.S. Fish and Wildlife, volunteering at Midway Atoll out in the Hawaiian archipelago. And it was the most amazing summer I've ever had. I didn't have a bad day that whole summer. And that was out in 80-degree weather, hanging out, shin deep in a duck seep that smells like methane, and it's still a good day, got done with the day and I'm like, oh, that was great. Did that for a few months and went back to my junior year and I'm like, oh, that's definitely what I'm gonna do.
So my interest in conservation started back when I was young. I did a lot of camping with my mom and dad, as well as spending a lot of time at Nisqually National Wildlife Refuge. And those are really my 2 core memories of the outdoors. I also watched a lot of Wild Discovery, the Kratt Brothers, Zaboomafoo, and Jeff Corwin, and those were all shows that really sparked my interest in the outdoors and nature and conservation and the animals in that environment. And I think what really led me to having a scientific curiosity and being curious about the natural world around me.
While My dad was a big, I guess, a wildlife mentor for me, even though he wasn't really a big wildlife person, wasn't even really a big hunter or fisherman, but he liked to recreate. And one of the things he did for his job, he was a civil engineer and worked for the Federal Highway Administration. So he had some cool jobs where he would work with some of our national parks and design some of our roads, our national parks. You gotta remember back in the day, 50s and 60s, a lot of our enjoyment of our parks was done inside of a car. If you talk to our grandparents, for example, a lot of our grandparents drove to national parks, and the cool thing was looking at the national park inside your car. And so he had the job at that time was designing these roads through national parks that kind of enhance the viewer, view of the national park. So I would accompany him on some of his projects in the summer. So that was kind of like my introduction to going to national parks, I guess, and seeing them not necessarily from a total visitor's perspective.
I can actually remember the first time I went fishing as a kid, and I would have been under the age of 10, and the state must have put some fish in the lake there, and it was, they gave you a rod and reel, and you had to cast and everything. And I mean, I remember the fish was like this big, right? And I remember this, and I must have been like this short, right? So it must have been a tiny fish. But I do remember that distinctly. I remember doing it. My mom actually bought squares of wax paper to hold the worms with so we could hook them and then pull the paper off and then cast. Not sure why she did that, because I was touching worms all the time by that point. But so I remember that. And then I think the other big thing was watching Jacques Cousteau specials as a kid. And I just love those. And here's this guy, and these biologists jumping in zodiacs and zooming around, looking at, and I'm like, whoa. And so I knew I wanted to do something in that field.
My career path, I felt, was really untraditional and had a really weird trajectory. And so I felt like I was influenced by a lot of different people in my life at a lot of different stages. But one thing I always tried to take from those who had something to offer me was picking up on lessons they would try to teach, even if they didn't verbally explain it. So really watching what people do, how they do things. I know, obviously my parents, they really instilled the importance of education in me, but then going into college, there are lots of different professors that were helpful and influential and incredibly important in guiding my career and my interest in conservation, or just science in general.
Again, I have two. So Jacques Cousteau got me started, right? I never met the man, but I mean, he's on there, he's on television talking, I'm watching. And then secondly, more during my professional time, a dear friend, a limnologist. So she did water, okay? She wasn't doing the animals or plants even, she did water. But she just was so encouraging at a time where it was my first permanent federal job. And mentoring, even though I worked for the service, she worked, she was at a co-op unit. And just really helping along, reminding you how to do things, what it meant, not taking the guff either. So yeah, so Jackie, she's since passed away, but just wonderful person.
My mentor through most of my childhood, at least on the nature end, was strangely David Attenborough. I grew up in the inner city. I have nobody in my family or in my immediate circle who does the type of work that I do, and I didn't have any connections to it, but I would watch documentaries religiously when I was a child. I've been lucky to have a slew of other direct mentors, and I don't know if I can pick any of them out individually that have helped me throughout their time, but they've all kind of imparted certain pieces of the puzzle to me being where I am today.
What guided me to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife is I had no clue it existed. I found the position that I am in now from another college's like workforce page, I guess. They like list things up and they're like, hey, here are internships. And I saw that there was an internship with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife in Western Washington. I did literally no research. I just saw that they needed a digital media intern and field crew member. And I was like, I can do digital media. I'm like a film major. That's exactly what I do. And I applied to it and got it. And here I am now. I really want to teach people about the things that I see. That's been something I've always been passionate about. And keep in mind, I don't do science communications. I'm an artist, I'm a filmmaker. So this is a great opportunity for me to really dive into like the science part of everything and really teach people while I'm also like learning.
I've always known that I wanted to do something in biology, so it was an easy guided path. It was one of the few things that I knew that I could do for 8 hours a day and not get completely washed out by it. The one thing that I've noticed at U.S. Fish and Wildlife is that you rarely meet someone who doesn't love their job. You know, you every once in a while you'll come across a person, but like I haven't ever been in an office where like the general vibe was that you know, like we all hate our jobs. I know we probably all had those jobs where you go in and it's just like it's like there's a miasma, right? It's just like a cloud that hangs over the office, and I've never had that here, and that's huge for me. Like to be around so many people who are passionate about their jobs. I knew that I would be part of an organization where we would not only be doing science, but we would also be doing actionable science, something that makes a real impact on the ground.
After 5 years, the pace wore me down. And so, you know, that was a big setback for me. I realized I just had to either get out of whatever I was doing. Something had to change. Either I had to slow down or I had to go to a different office and just do something different with a different pace. I just had to make a mind change, you know, and tell myself this wasn't a sprint. It's no longer a sprint, this is a marathon. I can't apply for a job in California or Oregon and get out of this stuff. I'm gonna have to stick with it. And I thought, well, for me to stick with it, I just gotta, you know, I gotta change my mindset, I gotta slow down. And so that's what I did. I told myself, okay, I can hang here and do the job. I quit looking for jobs and I changed my way of doing business, basically. But when I look back on it, it was very odd in the sense that I was willing to accept where I was. I had tried to get out. Well, I got burned out. I had tried to get out, couldn't get out, had to realize I had to stay, had to figure out how I was gonna stay there. And then when I was willing to stay there, then I get this call to say, hey, why don't you apply for this job? You know, it's like, it seemed like, what? But, you know, it was one of those things that, you know, it's still a life lesson for me. It was like all up here, you know? And then once you change up there, it's kind of like the opportunity meets preparation. It's like things just kind of happen. Once you have a positive mindset and get on a good track and of how to deal with adversity in life and your career, it seems like it can kind of work out.
My challenges now are certainly not the challenges I faced when I was a GS9 or a GS11 or a GS7. From early on, at least early on with the Fish and Wildlife Service, and it did impact my ability to do my job. So there was a fish biologist in the office that I was working with, and women should know their place. That was his attitude, and I would literally cry on Sunday night because I had to go to work. So needless to say, it had to impact my ability to do my job, right? How did I overcome that? It was difficult because I wanted somebody to fix this. I'm sitting here, this is obviously not okay, and I want somebody to fix it. And it was those days, unlike today, where you're supposed to be heard. And if you're not heard, you can go find somebody else who's supposed to listen to you, right? In those days, if you made too much of a fuss, you were labeled as a troublemaker. As I said before, you know, I had a mentor, Jackie, you know, and so I would talk to her. I would talk to some other women, most of whom were fisheries, okay? And the encouragement and support they gave me definitely helped me get through that time. finally, I'm like, I gotta pull myself together. I gotta do something different, because living like this is bad. It's just not healthy, okay? So what I started to do is, no matter how bad it was, I wasn't gonna complain, because I'd done that route already, right? I was just gonna do right. So when he came in the morning, and the way the office was situated, myself and another biologist were in the back in cubes. And so he would come back and he'd say good morning to the other biologist, a guy, and not to me. And as he turned around and walked away, I would always say good morning, no matter what. I think I took 3 weeks off. And I remember coming back and they're like, oh, we have a manuscript we're about to send in to one of the AFS journals. Do you want to read it and review it? Because some of my work went into it. Okay, so I read it and reviewed it. I wasn't an author, and this was the first I was seeing of it. So I pointed out the problems with it statistically, and didn't say anything else, just pointed this out. And somebody said, well, wow, we didn't catch that. I was like, yeah, and maybe if you'd shared it before now, things might have been different. So this went on. And finally there was a shift in supervisors. And the guy who was back in the cubicle with me, he became my supervisor, and this guy who was treating me this way, his supervisor. And I remember it was the end of the year. We were talking, and he said, I'd like you to try to work with so-and-so, and have a better working relationship. I was like, I don't know what else I can do. He doesn't talk to me, he doesn't include me in work-related issues. He doesn't say good morning to me. What am I supposed to do? And the biologist said, yes, that's been noticed, it's been duly noted, and it's being dealt with. And essentially, if you don't change your ways, I have to assume that you're treating her differently because of who she is. But it took a change in supervisors. It actually had been going on for years. It took a lot of patience. It took that support group I had of women, fish biologists outside the office. It took a lot of perseverance to keep moving forward and try to get work done. I think at the same time, I was also working on my outside interests, But yeah, it was a difficult time.
So I remember I was teaching a group of fourth graders about salmon life cycle. And this young black girl came up to me and she said, I've never seen a black scientist before. And I remember I just froze because she said it in such a declarative, matter-of-fact way with a slightly interrogative inflection that I didn't know how to answer it. I really didn't know how to answer that question for her. And I wanted to give her some really inspirational advice, but instead I just said, that's crazy, but yeah, we're around. What that told me though was like, it made me even more determined to make sure that I show up for people who look like me, especially the younger generation, to show them that like, it's not just white men like Jeff Corwin and the late great Steve Irwin that can be conservationists.
What advice or wisdom I would give either my younger self or someone that resembles me is what my dad told me. If you can see it in your head, you can hold it in your hand. And I hold that to a T.
I would say to folks who move like me and have the same impulsivities as me is to remain persistent.
Don't be as rigid as you feel the tendency to be. If you have the ability to, choose to do something that you love.
Have patience. There were times, and having patience, there's a spectrum, okay? There's probably times I had too much patience, and I should have said, no, stop. And there were other times, not too frequently, when I didn't have enough. But I would overall say patience. Think about it. Whenever you're making a major decision, think about patience.
The legacy that I would like to leave through my work is that through persistence, you can do and become whatever you want to be.
The lasting legacy is the work we do, will somehow enhance our landscape and, provide a better world for us to live in.
If you asked me 5 years ago, 10 years ago, many years ago now, what would my legacy be? I would be like, I have no idea. But I'd like to think now that I did my little part to make sure the people who do the work that does matter got it done. I'm hoping that because of what I've done, no matter who it is, no matter what color their skin is, no matter their gender, they're inspired to do a little more because of something I've done, maybe. That's my hope, fingers crossed.